Well, joining us right now to discuss this and more is Money News financial publisher Jeff Yastine. Jeff, thanks for being with us.
Hi.
Well, so tell us about this plan now. I mean, it's something that a lot of iPad users have been waiting for a long time, and this was kind of the same thing when Apple started to gain more market share in the computer industry. Obviously, stockholders and investors like this idea.
Well, it's not just iPad users who've been asking for it. Investors have been asking for it, and for good reason. I mean, the overall PC area has sort of become stagnant. That's one reason why, like, Dell Computer went private a year or two ago. So going into the area of the iPad, it's obviously good for Apple, and it's also very good for Microsoft. It's one key reason why Microsoft shares are at $40 today, which the all-time high was around $50, $51. That was set more than a decade ago.
And while we're dealing with the information age and all these technological breakthroughs, Jeff, it seems that the bounce Microsoft has gotten has just come off the old-fashioned buzz and the expectation. Now, stepping back for a second, not that we'd ever ask you to take a contrarian view, but we have seen challenges with technological innovations and some of the programs and new things that come in that are supposed to be the next big thing. How big of a risk is, I guess for lack of a better term, we could call the possible anticipation, the anticipation giving way to disappointment if there's some technical snafu here?
How much more profit can Microsoft make by availing themselves to this market that's been there for 3-4 years now, 5 years since the iPad came out, versus what they're going to lose in terms of not packing Office software into the licenses that a company would buy when they acquire a whole set of PCs instead. So it's really it's that sort of thing, and that's why Microsoft's been reluctant to make this move. But really, regardless of whether they make this move or not, the rest of the tech world is moving on, and that's a key reason why, with the rest of the rest of the executive core at Microsoft, the key men like Gates having sort of been moved off stage a bit here, you can have somebody like Satya Nadella bring that new thinking, and he's not wedded so much to what made Microsoft great back in the 90s.
What's interesting is to see how this is going to play with Microsoft's tablet, the Surface, and what that does, because people want to use Apple products. They might already be used to using those Apple products and have access to that software now. And also interesting to note, Apple's stock price today is off just a skosh, just 6 cents down right now. Meanwhile, Microsoft's stock price, $40.52, up 3% today. So they're clearly having a much more of a benefit from this than Apple is.
It's true, and I think investors are also anticipating that Satya Nadella will bring, as I was saying, new thinking to Microsoft. And you've got to believe that, as big as Microsoft is, that there aren't other great ideas embedded deep inside the organization that some kid has, but that haven't been able to rise to the surface. You get somebody like him who comes in and says, hey, let's get these people up there, sweep out some of the old guard, and maybe Microsoft finds a whole new set of areas that they can grow the company from that weren't previously available.
Now, Jeff, this is an interesting take, because for so long in our mind's eye, we think of Steve Jobs, we think of Bill Gates, we think of those guys being the innovators, but with the obsolescence that was happening with just so much going on in the 90s and in the last decade, you say that same kind of breakneck pacing for the next big thing inevitably leads to a kind of leadership shakeup in these major firms.
It does, and it's either the market causes that, or you get some sort of a far-reaching, far-thinking CEO who comes in and decides to do it. You know, if it ain't broken, go ahead and break it, is sort of the old sort of proactive way to think about this. Now, typically with Microsoft stock, it's been dead money for quite a long time. They have a dividend, but the stock really hadn't done all that much. It's been trading at a fairly wide range for the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years. However, with the kind of move that Microsoft has been making since it became apparent that the old guard at Microsoft was going away, that perhaps, like the last time I was on, I think I even said that Microsoft, I thought, was ripe for being broken up at some point.
Right.
And you have to wonder if now, with the stock having moved as high, the pressure's off on that. And it may give Satya Nadella some wherewithal to make bigger changes that perhaps the board would have resisted previously.
And to JD, to your point, we saw the old battle with Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and who benefited from that? That was the consumer, because competition yields a better product, and especially in a free market society. So what we could have here is another beginning, a renewal of that competition between Apple and Microsoft, because Apple, it seems lately, has kind of maybe been a little bit boring, if you will,
Sure.
Since Steve Jobs, and so maybe they need to ramp things up. Tim Cook is kind of seeing where the game is going right now. Is going to step his game up a little bit.
I think so. It'll put pressure on Apple. And the other interesting thing about Microsoft embracing, finally, the iPad, is that maybe it makes Microsoft more relevant to your Generation Y and millennials, who are the big adopters of iPads, and allows them more exposure to Microsoft products, which again, before, like driving, sorry, I was using driving, I'm going to make a GM analogy here,
Yeah.
that Microsoft previously to them was sort of like, driving a Buick or a Nash or something like that from the 1940s or 1950s that doesn't have any relevance to them. So it brings Microsoft much more into relevance afterwards.
Obviously, we're talking about Microsoft, but when John mentions Mr. Cook and Apple, how much time does Cook have to solidify his position? He came in the wake of the trauma and the loss of Steve Jobs. Is he in any trouble now? Because we see some things in the press that Steve Jobs thought Apple TV was the wrong road to take. Right. Some other second guessing, it would seem, perhaps stories planted by guys who aren't exactly cooking behind Tim Cook.
I think he is under pressure. I don't think in the very near term, but I think in the next year and a half, they need to show something, because right now, like you say about Microsoft with this move, as well as Samsung. Samsung's been coming out with a whole series of products. They came out with their new smartwatches and what have you. All that has yet to come out from Apple. And so they need to move quickly and show that the iPad and the iPhone are not their only sort of key points that drive so much of the profit of the company.
Something else that's hard to measure here too is in both Apple and in Microsoft, a lot of the employees hold that stock. So when you see the stock move, it creates this momentum, and it kind of can change the culture within a company,
Yes.
and also drive that further
it attracts
success.
new talent. I mean, we
Yep.
saw that. It can go in both directions. Microsoft was losing tons of talent, as was Yahoo. And as those companies change momentum, they can draw new talent back in, and that's where those new ideas, new products come from.
All right. Well, it's, what's old is new again, with the Cold War and with Microsoft as well. Completely different realms, but good stuff. Thanks for being around, Jeff.
Thanks, John. Thanks,
Really appreciate it, Jeff, to get that word on what's going on. Coming up next, what is the deal with Al-Qaeda's former spokesman? His trial continues in New York. We will talk about that and have a lot more for you on America's Forum.